Hola, San Antonio. Welcome back to Platica Politica, where politics meets real talk, big ideas, and just enough chaos to keep things interesting. Today, we've got a great lineup. We're sitting down with two candidates hoping to be the next lieutenant governor of our great state and to talk vision, priorities, and what they'd actually do if they got the keys to the office. And we're not stopping there. We're also talking strategy, headlines, and a little bit of achievement with Texas Democratic Party Chairman Kendall Scudder. We're digging into the latest surrounding the Trump administration and all that chaos, what's going on with the Democratic National Committee, and how Democrats think they can make real moves towards flipping Texas. So buckle up. Smart conversations, strong opinions, and a whole lot of Texas energy is coming your way. I'm your host, Robert Vargas III, and this is Platica Politica.
Estás sintonizado. You are listening to Platica Politica. We're live on KEDA Radio Jalapeño 99.9 FM and 1540 AM and on Facebook Live. Stay here for the latest news, politics, and a little bit of cheeseman.
We are back on Platica Politica. Thanks for sticking with us this beautiful Saturday morning all across Bexar County. Joining us now is Representative Vikki Goodwin, who wants to be your next lieutenant governor. How are you doing this morning, Vikki?
I'm great, Robert. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. How's the campaign trail treating you?
It's been great. I'm enjoying it. We got a little bit of rain yesterday between Houston and Dallas, but it's all good.
It's amazing to me. You have to campaign all across 254 counties and convince them that you're the right Democrat to face off with the Republicans in November.
That's right. It's a lot of work. Texas is a big state, but
it really is. Let's jump right in. Vikki, why should people care about who the lieutenant governor is when they go cast their vote on Tuesday?
Well, if people care about their neighborhood schools, they care who the lieutenant governor is, because for many years, the state of Texas has been underfunding our schools. And we're seeing the impact of that now with larger class sizes, some districts going to 4-day school weeks, a lot of school closures. It's really having a negative impact on our schools. And a lot of teachers are leaving the profession too. So that's number one. Number two is healthcare. You know, we all need healthcare. We all need to be able to go see the doctor, whether we're urban, suburban, or rural. But we're hearing so many stories of rural hospitals closing down, not enough doctors in all parts of the state, and people putting off their healthcare because of the expense. A lot of Texans don't have insurance, and so they just choose not to go to the doctor until it becomes an emergency. They end up in the emergency room where it's more expensive. So we've got to fix our broken healthcare system here in Texas, and the lieutenant governor can have a huge impact on that. Third is just affordability. With the Trump tariffs, Trump war, Trump deportations, we're seeing a huge negative impact to our economy. And so there are state policies that we can put in place. The lieutenant governor could be focusing on just that issue of affordability, but he is not focused on that. He's focused on culture war issues, putting the 10 commandments on classroom walls. And then finally, water. You know, Corpus Christi is in a water crisis, but Absolutely. It's certainly not the only city that is worrying about their water. So these are issues that everyday Texans care about. They want to make sure that they have the opportunities to get good jobs, to be able to buy their groceries, to pay for their medicine, all those sorts of things. And our current lieutenant governor is not paying attention to that, but it is a role that can have a huge impact.
Absolutely. Now, most people always hear about the governor and, you know, Abbott's rolling in, he's doing this, he's doing that. But most people don't know what the role of the lieutenant governor is. Most people don't understand that the lieutenant governor controls the Senate, right? And in order for a bill to get passed, it has to go through the Senate. So can you explain a little bit about what that role is and what that looks like and what a lieutenant governor under Vikki Goodwin looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Texas has a very strong lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor, like you said, can either pass legislation onto the governor's desk for the governor to sign or veto, or the lieutenant governor can keep that legislation from ever getting there. So a lot of people know about this push that Democrats have made to expand Medicaid so more people could get affordable health care. Well, the lieutenant governor has kept that from ever getting to the point of reaching the governor for a signature or a veto. So all legislation goes through the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor assigns committee. So all of the senators get assigned to committees. There's leadership of those committees. And then finally, the lieutenant governor has a huge impact on how our tax dollars are spent. The lieutenant governor sits on the legislative budget board and helps create the state budget every 2 years. So that's a huge, impactful position, and people should be paying attention to who their next lieutenant governor will be.
Now, you're running in the Democratic primary runoff. There were several people that ran in the March primary. The top two vote getters, because no one got the 50%, 50.1, as I like to say, or 50 plus one votes. And so now there's a runoff between you and Mr. Velez. What sets you apart, and why should Democrats vote for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, because it's important that people know what sets the two Democrats who are running to be the nominee apart. And it's experience. So I have served in the legislature for 4 terms. That means I have passed legislation myself. I've passed lots of bills into law, working with my fellow representatives and with senators throughout the state. So I have built the relationships. I know the process. On day one, I can be an effective leader. And it's a complicated process. And it's a process where having relationships with the other members of the legislature makes all the difference in the world in being effective right away. You know, it's a 4-year term, so it does give the lieutenant governor some time to get things done. But we have a lot of things that need to be done right away. Our schools are really suffering from not having the funding they need. We need to address that immediately. And we can't wait for someone who isn't familiar with the legislature to get that on-the-job training. This isn't a position for that.
It's really interesting. I've had the opportunity, the privilege to work within the legislature, and it's amazing to me all of the details and the process, right? Somebody doesn't just bring a bill to the governor's desk and say, "Hey, vote on it." There's a whole process that goes on even behind the scenes before it even gets to the floor.
Yes, it is a complicated process. It has to go through committee. It has to, a bill has to be read 3 times, has to be assigned to a committee. The chairman of the committee has to agree to hear the bill, and then it has to be voted out. Then it has to make it to the House or Senate floor. And then once it's passed one body, it has to pass the other. So if it passes the Senate first, it has to then pass the House. It takes a lot of effort to get every bill passed. And so knowing that process and knowing some strategy behind the process is really important.
So I have to ask, other than the 3 things that you spoke about at the beginning, at the top of the interview, what is it that you think? Is there any issue that we're just not talking about enough right now in Texas politics?
Oh, I think as I'm traveling around the state, my favorite thing to do is ask people what their number one issue is. And I will say a lot of people are very focused on federal, on Trump and everything that he's doing. So it depends on where we are in the state. But recently, something that came up is the border wall in Big Bend. So huge opposition on both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats alike, understand the devastation that would cause to the environment, to the animals that go back and forth. And there's not a need for it because of the terrain out there. So there have been multiple rallies in Big Bend. There were multiple rallies at the Capitol as well to oppose this Big Bend wall. And it's a lot of money. And we've seen walls don't ever keep people out. It's just not an effective deterrent.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Trump or his colleagues know, but Latinos know how to dig holes and we know how to climb ladders. And so I just don't know that the wall's the right thing.
That is right. That is right. There's better ways to have security, to have public safety. Another thing that comes up all the time is this detention center. People that are being detained when they are trying to go through the process and the rules keep changing. So I've had an opportunity to meet with a woman named Heather Alambario, whose husband got detained, and he had been within a couple of hours where she could go and see him on a regular basis. But then he got sent 6 hours away to another state, not just by bus, but by airplane. So you think about all the money that is going into the detention centers. People are profiting off of this. And then the bus ride, the plane rides, And it's just so unfortunate because we're tearing people's lives apart, people who are trying to follow the rules.
Absolutely. It's, in the beginning of this whole process, President Trump said that they were going to go after the bad guys and that they were going to go after folks who were committing crimes. But that doesn't feel like it's the case right now.
Right. There was another instance where Congressman Greg Casar held a press conference in Austin because an 18-year-old was detained. He was picked up because of, I think maybe his car registration was out of date. He was coming home from Popeyes. He works there 40 hours a week. He goes to school. He plays soccer. He was going to graduate this month, and he got detained. He was brought here at the age of 11 by his parents. And of course, his parents were responsible for the process of getting working towards citizenship for him. Once he turned 18, that responsibility became his, and he was, again, working through the process in the way the rules have been laid out, and they still picked him up and detained him. And we were asking at that press conference for him to be released so he could graduate, so he could be with his friends.
It's amazing. I mean, these are folks who are trying to do right by their future, right by their country. Vikki, what do you want folks to know about your candidacy before you head out for the day?
I just want people to know that there is hope, that we can make substantial change here in the state of Texas. Oftentimes, our current governor and lieutenant governor talk about this Texas miracle, but most everyday Texans don't feel like they're living in a miracle. But we can make a difference. We can vote for change. That's your power. Your power is your voice and your vote. Rather, your power and your voice is your vote. So make sure you turn out. The early voting goes through Friday at 7 p.m. Election day is May 26th. That's the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So please do come out and vote in the runoff for me, Vikki Goodwin, for Lieutenant Governor. You can always find out more at goodwinfortexas.com.
Hace generaciones, nuestras abuelas cruzaron fronteras con recetas guardadas en la memoria y tradiciones en el corazón. Pensaban en sobrevivir y en que sus hijos tuvieran un futuro mejor. Hoy somos la voz de quienes soñaron antes. Distintas voces y acentos, pero la misma determinación de seguir adelante. Este año no se trata solo de celebrar nuestra cultura, se trata de enseñarla, vivirla, reclamarla. Porque no somos una nota al pie de la historia norteamericana, somos parte de la historia americana.
All right, we are back right here on Platica Politica. We hope you're enjoying this gorgeous and kind of soggy, rainy Saturday morning here in South Texas. Joining us is Marcos Velez, who's running for Lieutenant Governor here in the great state of Texas. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
How's the campaign trail treating you?
It's treating me really well. I mean, we're traveling the state. We're meeting really, really good people, talking about important issues. So, I mean, what more can you ask for?
Absolutely. I understand you're a union man.
I am, through and through.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, look, it's all about solidarity and elevating working class people. I work for the United Steelworkers Union, but come from a union background as a member in the United Steelworkers. My mom was a member of the United Steelworkers. It was really the job that changed, our lives as kids. And so very proud of what working class people gain from their participation in organized labor.
Absolutely. We interviewed your opponent. You're running for lieutenant governor against Vikki Goodwin. And one of the things that she touted as why she was best suited for the job is her experience in the legislature, those types of things. But I'm sure you bring a bit of a different approach to that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so look, I work for an international labor union. I'm a negotiator. I negotiate with multinational corporations that have a higher annual revenue than the state's biannual budget. And so I think when you look at the role of the lieutenant governor, what we need is a firm negotiator that's going to stand their ground and fight tirelessly for working class people. But I also think you need someone that comes from the same lived experience as the people that are suffering right now. And so, yes, experience is important. But I think the most important experience is the one of understanding that every single time the price of gas goes up, working class people suffer. The experience of being a parent that has your kids currently in public schools and says, you know what, we don't know if our kids' school is going to have heat and AC year round. I don't know if my kids' teachers can pay their bills. That understands the experience of Americans used to live paychecks to paycheck. Now they live overdraft to overdraft. And so, I mean, yeah, look, experience is important. But when we look at the Texas Senate and we look at what's going to be prioritized in the Texas Senate, I think we need someone that's going to prioritize the needs of everyday working class people and that's going to come at it from a position of lived experience.
Now, what would you say is your top priority for Texas if you get elected lieutenant governor?
Yeah, so we're talking about like SB1, and the most important thing that we're going to push for day one. Look, honestly, it's going to be raising the state minimum wage. And a lot of people hear that and they think, well, I don't make minimum wage. But I tell people all the time, as someone that deals with wages for a living, there is a gap that your employer keeps between your wages and the state minimum wage. And so understanding that a rising tide lifts all boats, my intent is to raise the state minimum wage to a living wage, because all people that work a full-time job should be able to afford to live. They should be able to afford housing, food, and they should be able to have access to health care. We could go on and on about the other priorities, but I do believe that raising the state minimum wage will improve working conditions and living conditions for all working people in the state of Texas.
Well, and there's a lot of folks, I like what you said a minute ago, the rising tide raises all ships, right? There's a lot of folks that believe, well, if the guy under me is, their wages get lifted, what does that say about where I stand and how much money I make? And as you're saying, it should lift up the entire working class. I mean, that makes so much sense. I think many times in the American philosophy of government, we look at this as, you know, we always say it's not a pie, right? Me getting a slice doesn't mean that you lose a slice.
Exactly. No, and look, you make an important point. You do have a lot of detractors that say if they're going to pay a fast food worker $20 an hour, $25 an hour, I'm a welder and I make X amount, and they always want to compare what they do. But here's what I tell people all the time. One, all labor is labor, and it should be respected as such. And we shouldn't diminish the value of a fast food worker just because we don't perform that work. We need it. We you know, they're essential in our society. And so first and foremost, their wages going up have nothing to do with your job. Yeah. But your wages right now are based on a gap that is maintained between what you do and what they do. And so when their wages go up, yours will go up.
That's the plan, and that's the hope. Absolutely. You know, we're living in a society right now, and it's just so sad because as a country, it's about living out the American dream as we see fit for ourselves. And it's unfortunate that we live in a world in which someone who has a good paying job, whether it's a cashier or a Walmart worker, can't afford to live and support a family. And we do need to get our country to a place in which we're doing that. I have to ask, what do you believe the current Texas government is most out of alignment with as we're talking about everyday working class Texans?
Hey, that's a hard question,
start, right?
Where do you start? Look, here's honestly what I think. We have people that are literal millionaires running our state government, and we expect them to advocate for normal everyday people. It's like chickens for Colonel Sanders. I mean, look, their interests are so completely different from our interests. They have so much money that instead of focusing on the cost of living, they're focusing on targeting members of the LGBTQ plus community, immigrants. We're shoving little old ladies into vans and kidnapping them off the streets. I mean, like, all of this political theater just shows that they have way too much money and way too much time on their hands because they work part-time jobs, because our government is a part-time government, and they don't spend any of that time focusing on addressing our issues. So I think the biggest disconnect is they live in a completely different tax bracket, and they'll never understand the struggles of working class people.
As you're traveling across Texas, what is the thing that you're hearing most from, as I call them, Mrs. Martinez's, right? The average voter. What are you hearing from them as your boots on the ground?
Look, people are really, really concerned about their ability to make ends meet. I think a lot of people like minimize that concern because if you feel like you're getting by, you're kind of blind to the fact that the vast majority of people are not. Their money is not going as far. Look, you look, there was a video on the internet the other day. It was a bunch of teachers, and they were going around showing how much money they had in their account before payday. And one of them had like $1.16. One of them had like $18. But I thought it was a very honest and raw video that showed the state of America right now. When people pay just the basics, their phone bill, their light bill, their water bill, the rate on everything has gone up. But real wages, not like what you make an hour, but the amount that you get to keep has not gone up. And so, I mean, it's a big problem, and it's something that we have to address.
No, absolutely. I have to ask, you're a union guy. You're deep involved in advocating for the workforce and people within the workforce. Are there any particular industries that you think Texas should be investing in over the next decade and to prepare the workforce?
Yeah, so I think it's a bifurcated process. One, when you look at state-sponsored apprenticeship plans, we definitely need to spend more money on the trades, and it really doesn't matter which trade it is; they're all critical. We need to be spending way more money with the trades. But look, we're going to need more electricians. We're going to need more painters, glass workers. We're going to need the whole gamut: HVAC, sheet metal workers. We're going to need all of those skilled trades because they're all essential in the construction of either new technologies or as we diversify our power grid. I'm an oil worker by trade, like very proud oil man, but that doesn't change the fact that I understand that we have a weak power grid. And when you look at the state's investment in upskilling people, we could do a lot better with the surplus of money that we have. And so when you look at what the state needs to focus on, we really need to invest more in the trades because those people could help strengthen our grid and they can make life better for everyone within the state.
No, absolutely. You are a union man. You're hardworking. You're out there. What do you think, or how do you feel that experience has prepped you for this role? Because obviously, it's it's very much political. I mean, everything we do is politics, right? But it's political in the sense that people are jockeying for their bills. The lieutenant governor sets the schedule, decides what goes before the governor, those types of things. So, yeah, how do you feel about that?
I think it's perfectly prepared me. One, while a lot of politicians have to go into communities to understand the communities, I'm already there. And so, look, we cover 4 states. We have work all across the state. We work in towns that you've never heard of before the sun comes up, and we're there long after the sun goes down. So where a lot of politicians would complain, well, we did the best we could. We were working 12-hour days. 12 hours is a warm-up for most working class people. Yeah. Call me back when you get to 18, 23 hours, right? When you talk about having to drive all over the state and people complain about a 2 or 3 hour drive, it's nothing for me to get in the car in Houston and drive up to Dumas, Amarillo, knock out 11 hours. I mean, and that's a day's work, right? And so it's really one of those things. The work ethic comes in handy, but also the lived experiences, because while they're advocating for stuff that may not necessarily impact working class people, I understand what normal people are going through because I am a normal person. And so I think that's the experience we need. I think that's the kind of prioritization that we need in the Texas Senate. Someone that's going to say, listen, more important than what hangs on the walls of classrooms is whether or not teachers can pay their bills. More important than who our neighbor chooses to love is whether or not our neighbor can be housed and have access to health care. Those are the priorities that people are worried about. The fact that rural hospitals are shutting down is something that may be foreign to a lot of politicians. But as someone that travels the state and deals with normal working class people, I understand that that's an issue. But I also understand that we need to make sure we have resources for rural communities so that they can retain and attract talent that they have there, because it's hard to compete with the big cities. So look, all those are things that I believe that if we bring to the Texas Senate, Texas will finally be able to move forward, because it feels like we've been moving backwards in time in this state.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Listen, in closing, Marcos, what do you want folks to walk away with knowing most about you as they head to the polls on their last opportunity to vote this Monday? What do you want folks to keep in mind as they cast their ballot?
Look, I want people to know that out of all the candidates on the ballot for this particular race, I genuinely believe that I have more in common with the people that are voting right now than any other candidate in this race. I think our similarities are something that'll be valuable when I'm advocating for you, in the Texas Senate. And I would ask people to please cast their vote in our direction, because we need a change. And if we keep doing the same thing over and over again, we're going to get the same results.
Yep. Dolores Huerta would say, si no votamos, nos, well, I'm going to leave it right there. Marcos Velez running for Texas Lieutenant Governor. You can learn more about him on velezfortexas.com. That's www.velezfortexas.com. We're going to take a quick short break. We'll be right back.
This is Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar. If you're seeking a law enforcement career that offers competitive pay and excellent benefits in a county that truly respects and supports its law enforcement professionals, with a history dating back to 1731, in a safe, welcoming community where you can confidently raise your family, and where the cost of living is truly sustainable, then consider starting your career with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. Call 210-335-JOBS or text deputy to 210-934-7028 to learn more.
All right, San Antonio, aquí estamos en cabina. We're talking to Chairman Kendall Scudder of the Texas Democratic Party. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on again. I very much appreciate it, Robert.
Absolutely. What is going on in the Texas Democratic Party? You all have been busy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you've seen us in the news a little bit. I think that what's happening is that for the first time in a long time, the Democrats finally have it together, and we're working 54 counties around the state of Texas, ready to win some elections. We have great ticket of candidates up and down the ballot, all the way up from Senate, all the way down to Constable, and we're leaving no stone unturned. So I'm very excited about it. I think we have a really great election year ahead of us, but it only gets done if we do the work. So we're keeping our heads down, rolling up our sleeves, and doing the work that it takes to earn people's votes.
No, that's awesome. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is not just what Texas Democrats are doing, but how much Donald Trump is helping Texas Democrats. I mean, he is striking deals left and right. There has been, you've got this Supreme Court presidential immunity that has just reshaped American politics. And to the extent that now Donald Trump has even struck a deal with the IRS to stop folks from going after him, his friends, his associates, and everything else.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the fight after 9/11, where we were trying to get healthcare funds put together to help victims of that terrorist attack and the first responders that were there. And it took years, and committee meeting after committee meeting. But then when Donald Trump and his friends need a $1.8 billion slush fund to hand to themselves, suddenly the cogs of government move so quickly.
Yeah.
And the purpose of me pointing that out is to say, this is the issue with government. And this is what the point that Democrats are trying to make, is that when they need things, the government suddenly is this socialist institution that will write checks to whoever needs it. But when working class people and everyday people need help or need something for them, suddenly it's not something we can afford. The government doesn't work like that. You can't seem to get anything out of them. And that's what it has made me think about all week, is just how unfair this system is for working people, because they are treating our tax dollars like it's their own personal feeding trough.
No, absolutely. It's interesting that you brought up 9/11. I saw a report that talked about that 9/11, it took forever to get funding. But as soon as the Trump administration decided they wanted to create a slush fund to help the January 6th insurrectionists pay for their criminal bills, they were able to put that money together right away.
Yeah, isn't that funny? To me, it highlights what we have been talking about for years. Who is sitting at the table fighting for average Joe on the street? Just a regular guy that's going to work, probably pulling a double shift, trying to figure out how to put soccer cleats on his kid. Nobody's looking out for him. And that's the problem with this economy right now. He can't afford to do the basic necessities of life. He's having to work his ass off to try to even just break even and keep his head above water. And then anytime that a billionaire or someone in this Epstein class decides that they need something, all of a sudden everything stops, and we do everything we can to immediately just shuck out dollars to the richest people in this country who don't need it. They don't need it. They have this ridiculous control over the system. And so the argument we make is, this is why you got to elect a bunch of Democrats, because if you look at our candidates up and down the ballot, they're just regular people. They're just regular folks trying to take government back for all of us, because no one's going to give us the government back. We've got to take it as working class people. And to me, that's what the Democratic slate's about this cycle.
Absolutely. I want to play a quick clip of Donald Trump getting involved in Texas politics. Speaking of him helping out his friends, let's watch this. We'll be right back.
We won all races last night, every one of them, and we have a great candidate, I believe, in Texas, and I believe the Texas candidate, who's Ken Paxton, I think he'll win. I think probably he'll win very substantially, and I think he'll go on to defeat a very defective candidate, a candidate that believes in 6 genders, and he takes hits at Jesus Christ, and he's wearing a mask 6 months ago. Whereas anybody wearing a mask 6 months ago doesn't get it. and he's a vegan. He's a vegan in Texas, and you can't get elected as a vegan in Texas.
Did you talk to Senate leadership on the Republican side about endorsing against an incumbent?
I did. They'll be all right with it. They want to win. I know how to win.
Are you worried about ballroom?
Some of them don't know how to win. I know how to win. I think I've proven that, haven't I?
Are you worried about the ballroom funding?
All right, so Donald Trump knows how to win in Texas. What are your thoughts?
If he wants to pick Ken Paxton as his horse in that race, he's welcome to. I think birds of a feather flock together. Ken Paxton's been under an indictment the entire time he's been an attorney general. He can't even be faithful to his own wife, though the way that he's been treating her has just been absolutely humiliating. He's had whistleblowers out the wazoo in his office screaming about his illegal and improper behaviors. He takes, he trades. It's just outrageous. The list goes on. And then you got somebody like Donald Trump, who has his own character flaws to a huge degree. So of course they're going to have each other's backs because they're always looking out for each other, not looking out for you and me. Regardless of who the Republicans choose to nominate, our messaging doesn't change. We're running against an institutional system that doesn't work for working class people. John Cornyn's been in office the entire time I've been alive, hasn't made anybody's life better. So whether it's John Cornyn or it's Ken Paxton, it doesn't really make much of a difference to me. But it sounds like the candidate that most people view as being the worst option for Republicans electorally is the one that Trump is ushering through. And, we'll take it.
And I would think that Republicans would want John Cornyn, who, while I disagree with his politics and, he doesn't stand for me or anything I believe in, he's a little more straight-laced and probably on parity with Tallarico versus Ken Paxton, who is under indictment and has done all these horrible things that have been proven, right? It's not even allegations. It's things that have been documented and proven to be true.
Yeah, John Cornyn is a sellout who doesn't work for anybody but his donors and doesn't care about any of us. But he's not a criminal.
Yeah.
That's where they're different. Ken Paxton is also a sellout who does not care and is not going to issues, but also is a criminal. So it's either way, I think the issues are on our side. The question is the Democratic Party ready? And I sure hope we are. Is the Democratic Party ready to give people something to vote for, not just something to vote against? The Republicans have set their deck the way they've set it. Now we have an obligation to bring something to the table to give people something to vote for, not to spend the entire election telling you not to vote for Ken Paxton. And so what does that mean? What it means is that we will unapologetically throw down on behalf of the little guy every chance you get. And bringing policies forward to help fund public schools, give people access to health care, make their lives more affordable, and make your working conditions more livable. I mean, those to me are the things that we can do as a party to give people something worth showing up to vote for.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Gina Hinojosa, and I'm running to be the next governor of Texas. I'm here with my friend who you might recognize, who's going to tell you why 2026 is the year that Texans are ready to vote out Greg Abbott.
Everybody in Texas, Gina is going to be the next great governor of this state because she's a fighter. She's running to take back power for working people by lowering your costs and making sure health care and quality public education are within reach.
So if you haven't already, text Texas to 80191 or visit ginafortexas.com and sign up to volunteer, make a donation, and let's make 2026 the year that Texans have a governor who's going to fight for them and not the billionaires.
Texas, you got 6 months left to make history. Let's make every single day count.
And we are back. We're talking to Texas Democratic Party Chairman Kendall Scudder, who I believe is one of the only or one of the few millennial state chairs in the entire United States.
Yeah, there aren't many of us. It's not a young man's game in politics these days. So
I had to ask, I talk to groups about politics all the time, and, the feeling around the country is one of like stress and frustration. Looking at the current political climate, what made you decide to jump in and be the chairman of one of the largest states in the country?
Well, I mean, to me, it's of course stress and frustration. I feel the same thing every single day, but for me, it's this moment in history. Uh, if I thought the party was doing well and everything was great, I wouldn't be spending my time doing this. I'm a volunteer. You know, I do 16 to 18-hour days every day. I've got a young baby at home, 10 months old. My wife's, picking up the lion's share there. I wouldn't be doing this if I thought everything was going great. I chose to step up because I think that the entire party needs to be rebuilt from the bottom up in our image, the image of working class people. We've lost sight of who we are as a party. We've spent all of our time protecting institutions, losing sight of the fact that those institutions have not served people like us. And as Donald Trump tears them down, it's our obligation not to just rebuild them the way that they were, but the way that they should be. And I think we need party leaders that see the future like that. And so that's why I'm doing it, because when I look my son in the eye 20 years from now, and he asked me what I did to save this republic, I'm going to tell him I gave it everything I got. And that's what I'm doing. If we aren't successful this year, it is not going to be because the chairman of the party hit the snooze button. I am working my tail end off with all these grassroots leaders across the state to try to get it done. That's why I'm doing it. And because this moment in history is so crucial, the country is counting on Texas to meet a moment, and I intend to do that.
Absolutely. No, that's extremely important. And we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. When we talk about reform and changing the party and changing things from within, Chairman Ken Martin put out a statement today, as a matter of fact, talking about the need to change the DNC all the way down to the grassroots level. And there was apparently a report that came out after the 2024 election, called it an after action report. And he mentioned not being happy with what the report said, and now saying that the direction that the party needs to take is that we have to be campaigning. We can't let campaigning end at the end of election cycles. Campaign ads are not a substitute for deep relationship building. He talks about not taking voters for granted and being laser focused on winning elections, not just this election, but in the future. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, look, Ken Martin commissioned this report after he got elected. And then he said he was going to release it, and then he didn't. And everybody got upset about it. We didn't know why. All we knew is that it didn't come out. And I count me amongst the people that were frustrated that it hadn't come out. So what he did today is what we do where I'm from. When you make a mistake, you own up to it, you make it right, and you move on. And he said, you know what? I guess I should have put it out and been honest with everyone. The reason I didn't put it out is because it wasn't up to my standards. It wasn't as good as I thought it should have been, but I'll let you see it if you want to see it. And he put it out for everyone to see it. I have a lot of respect for that. Wish it would have been done right, but I also know we're so far removed from it. We're already in the middle of our plans for this upcoming election. We're just going to plow forward, and I have a lot of respect for somebody that owns up to mistakes. So to me, it's a big win in Ken Martin's book, at least in my personal moral code, as somebody who just owned up to something and made it right. And I think that's lacking in politics, just that basic humanity of decency and stuff that you're taught when you're a kid growing up. And I like it. And so, we now have seen it. We've seen that it kind of is a garbage report. So we understood why he didn't want to put it out. That's fine. I'm not making decisions based on what the DNC wants, just to be frank. I'm making decisions on how we win elections here in Texas and what our grassroots in the state want. And that's building a 254 county party in every corner of the state. So, this thing doesn't change anything for me. We're going to continue moving full steam ahead. If all the consultants and DC eggheads care enough about it and they want to spend all their time on it, they can. I'm busy. I have stuff to do.
All right. I don't hate that at all, sir. I will say this, knowing what knowing what we've seen in Texas politics, people always Monday morning quarterback after an election, and cheers to me for using a sports term correctly. But folks like to Monday morning quarterback after an election and say, we need different this, we need messaging, we need this. What is the path? Like, you're the chairman, you're the guy at the helm. What are we doing to win, and what does that actually look like without just the political platitudes, and what is the strategy here?
Yeah, I mean, we've simply put, we've been getting out organized. When I became chairman, the party only had a third of its precinct chairs full for the whole state. Well, we had 20% of our county chairs completely vacant. And what that means, if you're not familiar with what a chair is like that's like your go-to person who does all the organizing. So 2/3 of our state didn't have a chief organizer, and 1/5 of our counties didn't have anyone operating inside of it.
Wow.
That's no one's fault but ours, right?
Yeah.
And so the first plan of action is we've got to start building infrastructure that should have been built 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to consistently work to do that. It's not a thing that you just wake up one day and it's all done in 30 days. This is something that gets built over time to build long-lasting infrastructure for the organization and for our opportunities to win. When special elections are called, we need to be able to spring into action. And so that, I think, is first component. Next component is we've got to stop being amateur hour. We're always sitting around wondering why the national funders aren't coming in to help us in Texas. We're the most expensive state to operate in because of all of our media markets. Why aren't they here? Well, it's because we've been operating like we're amateur hour. So we've been building a coordinated campaign that actually looks like they do in swing states, where we're working on a team together, rolling volunteers in, covering the entire state, not just selected pockets in urban areas, covering ground and organizing, treating no one as if they are for granted and they owe us their vote. We have a responsibility of earning votes from every person in the state. And so that coordinated campaign, we've secured a large amount of funding for that. And we're feeling really good about what that's going to look like as we're going forward. I think the whole party apparatus in of itself is operating differently than it has in previous elections. And, it may sound weird hearing the millennial chair saying it, but you got to go back to doing this the old fashioned way, the way we were doing it when we were winning. It's shaking people's hands, looking them in the eye, telling them what you stand for, and asking them for their votes. You can't just lock a bunch of consultants in a room in Austin and buy your way out of the problem. And this is the path we're choosing to take. If it doesn't work, we'll learn from it. But frankly, I think that if we continue doing things the way we've always been doing them, we're setting ourselves up for great failure. I want to rethink the way we're operating from the bottom up.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being boots on the ground. I know you're up for re-election at the Texas Democratic Party convention. And so we look forward to seeing you get out there and win your re-election, Chairman.
Well, thank you, Robert. I very much appreciate it. And always a pleasure to be able to come on Radio Jalapeno.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. That's Texas Democratic Party Chairman Kendall Scudder.
Estás escuchando Platica Política. Quédate con nosotros para enterarte de las últimas noticias, análisis políticos y un poco de chisme. Aquí en Queda Radio Jalapeño.
Así es. Escúchanos en directo, síguenos en las redes sociales o sintoniza donde quiera que escuches tus podcasts favoritos.
Estás sintonizado. You are listening to Platica Politica. We're live on KEDA Radio Jalapeño 99.9 FM and 1540 AM and on Facebook Live. Stay here for the latest news, politics, and a little bit of cheeseman.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Platica Politica. I'm your host, Robert Vargas III, and I want to encourage you to stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay involved. If this conversation sparks something for you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, talk about it, and bring it to someone else. Bring someone else into the discussion. Follow along, send in your questions, and let us know what issues and who you want us to cover next. Don't forget that Election Day in the runoff election is on Tuesday. So if you're registered to vote, you can cast your ballot from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at any voting center in Bexar County. Remember, your voice matters, and this space is built for it. Democracy doesn't happen on its own. It's a contact sport. So until next time, demócratas, quédense en la lucha. Stay in the fight.